Tiffany here with Years of Years, and it's This Day in Disney for July 23rd, and today we're headed back to 1908. We've been doing that this week a lot, right around the 1900s, but with another birth of an actor. So some really important birthdays this week also. But on this day, Karl Swenson is born in Brooklyn, New York, and he actually was a character actor who started out on radio. Swenson is really well known, and you might know him from, if you enjoyed Little House on the Prairie, he was Lars from Little House on the Prairie. So his role was like the owner of the town or whatnot. So not a huge role in the show, but really well known for it. But the Disney connection that he is, really cool Disney voice actor for the movie The Sword and the Stone. He was the voice of Merlin. Really neat, because he started his career so far back, and he did so many different he started in radio, then he went to he also did stage, he did film and television. So really interesting. Merlin wasn't necessarily like a typical role that he did, but kind of perfect for his age in life and whatnot. Really interesting. So he actually was born, like I said, in New York, and he was of Swedish parentage, and he had that really bright blonde hair, and he was planning to be a doctor. He enrolled at Marietta College and undertook pre-medical studies, but he left the field to pursue acting. Pivotal times, you never know when people go into college, or that whole time, young adult time period, so many times I've studied about people, and it turns out that they don't necessarily do what they intended to or started out with, and that's just fine. That's part of the experience, is finding out what you love and what you really want to do, what you're talented at. So he made several appearances, like I said, on stage in the 1930s and 1940s, and then he was on radio. And obviously, going back, I don't know how, he was on radio from the 30s through the 50s. I don't know how many of you fans out there are radio fans or would know any of the shows, but you can go look up his, list of achievements, and you'll see some of the shows that he was on. Even the films that he was in were not super, well known, but he was actually in more than 35 roles in feature films from television movies. Lots and lots of westerns, so he's a big western guy. And then he was in a bunch of shows, television shows, that you guys would just know, like Eddie Haskell's. He appeared as Eddie Haskell's father, George, in Leave It to Beaver. He was in Tales of Wells Fargo, Riverboat, and The Man from Black Hawk. Just tons and tons of shows. We're talking about the 50s and the 60s when all these shows, and not a lot of them have necessarily translated into shows you watch today. They do replay a lot of shows from that time period. It'd be kind of cool if they showed everything, if you could see some of these shows that we're not as familiar with. But he was in a ton of stuff. He did a short bit on the Andy Griffith Show. Lassie, of course, he had a small role in Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. So just all over the place. He was in Bonanza, and he had a few episodes of Perry Mason. So to me, westerns, Perry Mason, Alfred Hitchcock, he could do it all. And then ending up doing, like I said, being Merlin in Walt Disney's 1963 classic, The Sword and the Stone. I love that film. I love the role of Merlin actually quite a bit, and in his character. So like I said, he ended up being one of the last shows he was on was Little House on the Prairie as Lars. I really liked his character, and just like his demeanor at that age was very gentle. And so there's kind of, well, first he did marry actress Joan Tompkins, and she went all the way back to radio as well. You can go look at her filmography also, and they were both in just tons and tons of stuff, highly talented people. But going back to Little House on the Prairie, so they filmed this episode at the end where basically the character, his character is dying, and it's kind of like the town is dying as well, and he's like maybe the heart of the town. It was a very dramatic episode, and you know, they filmed it, and he gave this incredible, like, I don't know if you'd call it a speech, a monologue, talking about, you know, his, you know, because he was gonna die, and just coming to grips with that and everything. And I don't know, it was very emotional. You can go back and look for that episode. So that aired October 16th, 1978, and he had gone 8 days previously to visit family, and he actually had a heart attack, and he did pass away. So, you know, it's just, he really gave his heart and soul up until the very end to, you know, acting and his talent, and he put it all in at the end. And maybe he was aware that it was his time a little bit. I know sometimes people he was in his 70s, and so I've known, you know, people around that age, older especially, who kind of, you know, they can kind of tell it's time. And you know, like my grandmother, she kind of did it way before she passed away, but she would always kind of be like, if it's my time, I just want you to know how much I love you. And she said that like a few times. But that's just something I think people do, and it's really special that he did it in character on Little House on the Prairie, so you go check that out. But love him in Merlin. Love that he gave so much, so talented. Oh, lastly, you have to know, you can look this up, really interesting. He went by Peter Wayne for 2 years of his career in some of the stuff that he starred in, so you can check that out. He, you know, that's the first actor I've come across that's gone by a completely different name for a period of time, that he did it for 2 years. Usually they'll change their name and stick with that, but you know, he did Peter Wayne, and then he went back to his name. So it's really interesting. If you guys remember, you know, Karl Swenson and his career, go look him up. You'll know his face when you see him. And go watch Sword in the Stone on Disney Plus, because it's there. Now we can all enjoy it, even though it wasn't a big hit at the time. Let's make it a cult classic, right? But anyway, that's it for this day in Disney. We'll see you guys next time. Bye!